This show is sponsored by MidasResources.com, your trusted source for precious metals since 1996. Call Midas today at 1-800-686-2237.
Truth Traveler Radio Show. I'm your host. I'm Erin and Dankins. This is Wednesday, May the 21st of 2014. And our guest is right up my alley tonight. We are going to have a good time, and you're going to learn a lot. And hopefully you'll come out the other side of this show. You have a little bit better idea of how to handle some situations. His name is Stefan Verstappen. He's a writer, a world traveler, an artist. He's a martial arts expert. He's a street youth counselor. He's lived and traveled throughout China and East Asia. While in Asia, he studied Oriental art, culture, and Kung Fu. Verstappen is a master of the Lohan School of Martial Arts and one of the few Westerners to have lived and studied Kung Fu in China. Stefan is a member of the Canadian Society in China and also worked as a chairperson for the City of Vaughan, International Economic Development Committee, in charge of facilitating the Twin Cities partnerships with cities in Japan and China. He's an author. Multiple books that deal with, like one is Chinese business etiquette. But the one that caught my attention, and you'll understand why, listeners, was The Art of Urban Survival, a family safety and self-defense manual. And we're going to just kind of discuss that tonight and how to kind of deal with some of the nutty, nasty, mean people that we may have to deal with during a natural disaster or, oh, wait a minute, maybe an economic collapse, the dollar falls, whatever. He lives in Canada now, and he is just a pretty awesome guy. I think you're going to learn a lot tonight. Welcome to the show tonight, Stefan.
Wow, Erin, thanks for the build-up. I hope I can live up to that.
Well, I think you're going to more than live up to it. Listeners, check out his website. It's ChinaStrategies.com. ChinaStrategies.com. Of course, it's linked from the Truth Traveler. Check it out. There's also a lot of interviews and videos that Stefan has done up on YouTube, so check it out. No, Stefan, you're like this, almost like a Renaissance man. I don't know. You've done an incredible amount with your life.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I like that term, a Renaissance man. Yeah, I've just always had a curiosity for things. Just about everything in the world I find fascinating. So it's just natural for me to want to learn as much as I can.
Well, I appreciate that, and I like that. And that you studied Kung Fu. Listeners, I don't know a ton about martial arts. I had some good friends that were pretty high up in it. But to actually study Kung Fu in China, that's a pretty major accomplishment, I understand, Stefan.
It was the most wonderful experience in my life, not just for the Kung Fu, but because as a student of Kung Fu, I was given special status. Our teacher was one of the most famous, respected masters in all of China. He comes from a long line of famous Chinese heroes. I mean, they made hundreds of movies based on the life story of his master. And he was 78 years old when he taught us. And he would take us everywhere, and to Beijing Opera, to tournaments, to cultural events, and we were treated, because he was such a famous kung fu master, we were treated like royalty. I was embarrassed how well I was treated.
That would have been something special, though. I mean, to really get to where you're not in the in crowd. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you've almost assimilated into the culture that way.
Oh, absolutely. We were part of the in crowd, and if you can say that, we were given special status, and I was able to mix with a wide range of people in China. I mean, everything from bankers and international fund managers, all the way down to street level triads and sing-song girls, and I got along with everybody. I really did, and I just enjoyed all the different cultural aspects of it, of living there. So,
did you have? Let me ask you this, because I'm just kind of weird, and we're going to talk about urban survival, listeners. Don't panic.
Sure. Yeah.
But when you went over there, I've never even been out of the country. Okay, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but it's the truth. I've not even been to Canada, okay?
Oh.
Did you have a lot of culture shock when you went there?
Not at all. No, because when I had started studying martial arts, I'd started off with taekwondo and karate and judo. But, my motivation for studying martial arts is like completely different from what everyone else's motivation was. I was at that time on a very serious spiritual path, and I was investigating shamanism, and through my investigations of shamanism, I came across the concept of temple dancing or sacred dance, and I thought I wanted to find, someone that could teach me, temple dancing, and a way of increasing your awareness and enlightenment through movement. And for all your listeners who take dance out there, you will know what I'm talking about. That when you move and when you're in the rhythm and in the body, in the moment, in the present moment, there is a great spiritual development that takes place. And I couldn't find a temple dancer instructor here in Toronto at the time. So through my research, I thought the next best thing was martial arts, and specifically the Chinese martial arts. So I went down to Chinatown here in Toronto, and I went to kung fu clubs and back alleys here in Toronto for like 5 years. So going to China was not culture shock.
Well, that would make sense. It would. I know my husband's favorite country.
Yes.
Ever. I mean, he would move there hands down if he could, and I'm like, oh, no. He loves Thailand.
Oh, don't get me started. What a fantastic country. Beautiful.
He said it's absolutely beautiful. He loves the people. Yeah. It's right. I can see me in Thailand. That's not going to work.
No. We used to have a saying, don't bring the girlfriends to Thailand, because they hate it. Everything that the men like, it's very exotic. You really get the feeling, wow, now you're outside your comfort zone. You're really outside the box. And it's very exotic and beautiful, stunning scenery and the culture and the smells and the tastes of the food. Fantastic. But for women, we were staying at some cabins on Koh Samui, and next door was a couple of girls, and they ran screaming from their hut. Turned out a cobra had crawled up through the toilet.
No.
Things that
I don't mind snakes, but cobras
on vacation.
No.
So.
No, I don't. Thanks. I can handle snakes. I mean, a lot of people around here will run screaming when they see one. I'm okay with them. They don't bother me. But I don't. A cobra coming up my toilet.
Yeah. No, that was
No. I'll pass on that. Thanks. But I would love to visit there. I would love to see it, just because he said how beautiful it was. So I don't know. I'll probably never get a chance to do that, but I guess I could put it on my bucket list, right?
Yeah, well, it's not that hard to go. It is a pain that the airplane flight is horrendous, but and go when it's not really hot. Go in February, because in the summertime you can't move it. You just sweat all the time.
Well, it's kind of like Indiana in August, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so your interest in martial arts led you to a whole life change. I mean, it got you to try to help business people integrate and understand the culture.
Yeah, it just it's where your life kind of takes you. You follow your passion and your interests, and it's a struggle, because nobody's really on your side when you want to do these things. But you say, I'm going to try it and see what comes out of it, and. From what I've learned and what I've experienced, and I had such great opportunity and great experiences. So, the natural thing was to try and put it into writing, and so that other people can benefit from, the lessons I learned, and they don't have to leave the house. They don't have to leave the country to figure it out, or to receive some of the wisdom from from those cultures.
Well, I think that's very cool. It is very interesting. The older I get, the more interested I am in other cultures. So. It's very interesting.
Well,
but how did you...
Erin, that's...
I think it is.
You do. It is. If you stop losing the curiosity, the wonder of life, it's over after that point. It's just a slow decline. You have to keep your curiosity. You have to keep your interest in learning new things always.
Well, I have this thing that I really don't want Alzheimer's or something. Okay, I just really don't. So I take my vitamins, minerals, and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I take care of myself, but I'm constantly engaging my brain, and I hope that helps, because I see the older people that are in their 80s and 90s. They're still researching, they're still reading, they're actively engaged in something, and their minds are sharp as ever.
Yeah.
And then you see the people that park in front of the TV, and their minds just are slipping. I'm like, oh no.
No, that TV set, it sucks the soul out of you. You know.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think it does. You know, you're just zombified. And, you know, it's the old adage, use it or lose it, you know. And
that's it.
I've seen, you know, my Kung Fu master was 78. One of my other mentors was a woman from St. John Angeles. She was 79, sharp as a tack. She did everything. She did yoga. She was a model. She marched in the parade. But these people kept their minds active the whole time. That was the difference, you know.
I really think it is. I do. And exercise, moderate exercise. You don't have to go out and lift weights and stuff like that.
Nope.
Moderate exercise does help you feel better. Well, how did you go from this, Stefan, over to writing the book, The Art of Urban Survival?
Well, it's sort of a culmination of three threads. One on a sociological level is, actually, let me get to that third then. One is on a personal level. You know, I noticed in my life encountering a certain type of people. And back when I was younger, we didn't, you know, have the internet in those days. And even though, you know, me and most of my friends that I hung out with, we read books on psychology. We kept up to date on, you know, Jung and Freud and things like that. But, you know, passing understanding of that. But, of course, the term psychopath never came up in any of these writings. And it's very hard to find the term psychopath in psychological writings. You know, there's no money in it because they can't be cured and they would never seek treatment anyways. So you don't come across that in average reading or just generally skimming, you know, books on psychology. But we noticed a type of personality, and we had a name within our clique. We called them psychic vampires.
Yep.
So, you know, people that just suck the life out of you. They just take and take and take, and they never give back. And it's always some drama, and the drama always ends up in you having to give them more and forgive them again and love them better this time. And, you know, and so that was one thread. So I understood that. Then from a point of history, when I was researching my first book, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, I used historical anecdotes from history to, you know, illustrate each of the strategies. And
well, hold that thought right there, Stefan. We're going to our first commercial break, and then we'll be right back, and we'll pick that up. Stefan Verstappen. His website is ChinaStrategies.com. So check that out, listeners. Now, Stefan, right before the break, you started to talk about strategies.
Yeah, so on a personal level, I kept encountering these types of people, and I didn't know at the time what I was looking at, but I knew there was something wrong there. And then in researching history, and of course when you research history, what you're reading about is the lives of kings and emperors. You're not reading about the lives of craftsmen and farmers. And so the lives of kings and emperors and shoguns, I kept noticing once again this same type of personality occurring. And then on a sociological level, you know, we know there's something wrong with our society. Everybody knows it now. Things aren't good. And we don't know exactly what the source of this ill is. And so on a theory of, you know, historical cycles, again, I'm encountering the same type of personality. And that personality is the psychopath. And what has happened, when you understand what they are and how they operate, you do the math, and everyone will eventually come to the conclusion that these people are going to take over our society. They are going to rule us, and then they're going to destroy us. And so the art of urban survival is, it's almost a prophecy in that sense, because what I'm doing is I'm predicting the historical cycle that we are in now, a cycle in which our society is dominated by malevolent people who are, you know, greedy and do not care about the common people. And what typically happens to a civilization and a society when these people seize control of the major sources of culture and money and government is the slow decline towards the end of civilization. And so, The Art of Urban Survival begins, the book opens with the chapter on defense against the psychopath, which is for people to get the tools they need to defend themselves on an interpersonal level so that you can recognize these types of personalities in your personal life and learn how to avoid them and at least minimize the damage they do to you, because they do a tremendous amount of damage in people's lives. The list is endless. But also, as our society continues sort of a decline, we are going to see certain things occurring. For example, crime is going to increase. So many of my chapters deal with crime. Also, our infrastructure is going to crumble. We know this happens because every previous civilization, the same pattern has occurred. When the psychopaths are in power, they suck up all the money. There's no money for infrastructure repairs. The roads become deteriorated, the dams fail, and natural disasters begin to occur more frequently. And so part of the book is how to deal with natural disasters and blackouts. Another thing that you'll see is as things get worse, as we see now with the unemployment rate and the homelessness and the poverty, people are going to reach a boiling point. So at first there will be protests and demonstrations, and then they'll become riots, and then they'll become street fighting, and then there'll be insurrection and even possibly civil war. And so there are chapters on dealing with riots and martial law and how to live in a corrupt society, because that's where we're headed. But I think we have a wild card in the mix, even though the historical pattern gives every indication of our, the glory days of the 50s, 60s, and 70s being permanently a thing of the past and never coming again. There is a wild card. We might not go down the toilet the way that Rome did, the way that 83 Chinese dynasties did. And that wild card is the internet right now. And so I'm trying to add my voice to the many thousands of people that are speaking out through the medium of the internet, through the radio shows like you're doing, Erin, and through podcasts and blogs and things like that. And it might be possible if we have a revolution, a mental revolution, an attitudinal revolution, if as a group we say enough of these psychopaths, we're not going to follow them to hell, let's stop the madness,
Yes.
We might still be able to turn it around. If not, then we're going to be in civil war and or have a chip implant in the brain and be groveling at the feet of.
We're going to be slaves. That's right. And I'm not.
We're going to be slaves.
I'm not going to do that very nicely. Anyway, we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Truth Traveler. Our guest tonight is Stefan Verstappen. His website is ChinaStrategies.com. And he is the author of The Art of Urban Survival, a Family Safety and Self-Defense Manual. Also Chinese Business Etiquette. He's written The 36 Strategies of Ancient China and several more on there, listeners. Check that out. Now, you're talking about the psychopath, and I've done a lot of shows on sociopaths and narcissists because I realized, like you, that these vampires, they're running the planet.
Yeah.
And we better learn how to, number one, recognize them, and number two, the biggest thing is learn to say no and steer clear of them. Just keep them at an arm's distance, because that's all you can do, because otherwise they'll ruin your life, won't they?
Yeah, they'll destroy you and everyone around you. It's unbelievable the amount of damage they create. My advice at the end of the chapter is three things. Don't vote for psychopaths. Don't worship in their churches, and don't buy their products. If you can avoid it. Yeah. So I don't vote, and I don't go to any of the large denomination churches. I have my own church.
I don't either.
It's called nature. I go out every day in the woods, and that's my church. And
I don't believe in organized religion anymore. I've seen, like you talked about, these people, they get in these churches and they just, God, they suck the life out of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an email from a very close friend of mine. She said, well, when did this brainwashing start? I said, prehistory. Mm-hmm. The oldest temple, known temple in the world, before the more recent Göbekli Tepe was excavated in Turkey, was on Malta. And the most interesting thing about that was they found a statue with a separate head that was sort of articulated to fit into the stone statue, sort of like a Barbie head, mm-hmm. a Barbie doll. And it had holes, so they imagined that it was manipulated with ropes. And then behind the statue was a secret little room, and in the room there was a speaking hole. And so the theory was that it was a dimly lit temple, and probably the people that went in there were first given a brew of a narcotic. So, you're stoned when you go into this dimly lit temple, and there is this stone statue. And suddenly the head will turn around and look at you, and a voice will boom throughout the room, because they even built these temples to have a peculiar acoustic property that if you spoke through that hole, the acoustics would reverberate that voice throughout the whole room. So then this booming, reverberating voice of God would be speaking to you. It's the Wizard of Oz.
Exactly.
A great book, but that's what it is. It's a big smoke and mirrors perpetrated by tricksters and con artists and psychopaths to trick you and fool you in order to control you and manipulate you and bleed you dry. That's it, Kind
of like the bankers and the TV preachers today.
Exactly.
And our politicians. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big smoke and mirror show, and it's meant to dazzle you and keep you confused. Meanwhile, look at the money coming out of your pocket. Look at your life, because to me, life is not money. That money represents time on this planet doing what you enjoy. For example, I never buy a new car because I calculate the $4,000 I lose driving it off the lot would buy me 2 months in Europe. And that 2 months in Europe is more precious than a late model car could ever be. So,
right on.
They are sucking your life away. People are, we all need to work and earn a living, but to the degree that people are holding down 2-3 jobs and barely able to save any money for retirement, and meantime they have, here in Canada, 2 weeks holiday a year, 2 weeks out of a year of your life that you're actually able to do something, and most people spend it working or trying to decompress.
Right.
This is no way to live.
They've geared society to be nothing more than serfs or wage slaves, however you want to term it.
Yeah, we're slaves. We absolutely are. I believe that. It's, going back to Plato's analogy, where the cave, where people are chained to a cave and all they can ever witness is shadows on a wall cast by a fire lit behind them. And this is our society. I mean, we're all watching these shadows on a wall. And that shadow on a wall is called TV and movies, and popular entertainment. These are just shadows cast on the wall. I mean, we need to stop looking at that, turn around and see the reality. And in Plato's analogy, he says, if one man were able to break his chains and go out and see the real daylight, see the world as it really is, and he returns to the cave and he tries to free his fellow slaves, that they will turn on him, that they can't believe that what they're looking at isn't real, until you are able to shut it off and go and take a look at what is real and then come back to it. And so we think our society and our lives and everything, it's all very real for us. The sports teams, the TV, the celebrities, the politicians, the government, it's all very real, and yet, just like, the Eastern philosopher says, it's all an illusion. Certainly that part of it, it's an illusion. And another word for an illusion is a lie. It's all a lie.
Well, it is. And it's hard for people, they don't want to realize or come to understand that the world that they're living in has been created for them. And it's not real. It's not reality. And they like you said, they almost run screaming if you try to tell them this, a lot of people. But then again, times are getting pretty tough right now for a lot of people, and a lot of people are kind of stopping and thinking, now wait a minute, I almost can't afford to go to the grocery anymore. What's going on? So people are kind of coming around. It's kind of like they're waking up from a long nap.
Yeah.
The slumber that was endless, and they're kind of startled and befuddled. But, so sometimes hard times are good if it starts to get people to observe reality as it really is.
Well, if anything's going to wake you up, it's being starving and homeless on the street. That
might do it.
Is a slap of reality. I would hope that it doesn't come to that, but I think that's where it's going. And for a large amount of people, that's the way it is. My wife and I have always been sympathetic to homeless people. We've given at the food bank. We invited them over for Thanksgiving dinner, and things like that. And their lives are not their fault. It's not their fault that's poor. There's a certain percentage of people, throughout history, throughout society, there's going to be 3 to 5% that, low IQ, substance abuse, they end up homeless, and often you can't do much to help them anyways. But that's not what we're seeing now. What we're seeing is middle-class people that have always had jobs and homes and cars and worked their whole lives and did everything they were supposed to do and paid all their goddamn taxes.
Oh, watch it.
I'm sorry. Paid their taxes and did everything they were supposed to do. And now they're living in the ravine at the edge of town. It's horrible. Yeah. It is. That's a slap of reality. But once you get to that point, there is not much you can do. We still have a chance, most of us, to do something about it, to get ready. That's why, my book is about emergency preparedness. Get some things together now, extra food, extra equipment in case the power goes out, in case the gas gets turned on. Figure out how to make moonshine, because you can always run a car on a still. Mm-hmm. Things like that. Start to develop some skills now while we have the chance. Once you're, living in the creek, it's too late. You're not going to be able to do very well.
Now, you say basically, and I think you're right, that let's just put it down to a collapse of the dollar. I know it's going to affect Canadians too, because we're going to take everybody down with us. I understand that.
Yeah.
For those people that live in, we are with Mexico. It's all good. So, there's a lot of people that live in big cities, and it's really not realistic to have their little bug-out bag and think they're going to strike out to the woods and build a little lean-to and live there. That's not realistic, is it?
No, I was a wilderness survival instructor when I was younger. I'm a big fan of the outdoors. I love nature, canoeing, hiking, and so on. But I wouldn't go bug out to the woods. You're not going to survive. And there seems to be this presumption, because I speak to people, especially people that know a little bit about prepping, not a lot, but a little bit, or people that have sort of thought about it a little bit, and I ask them, well, if there's a disaster, what would you do? And they say, oh, well, we'll just, go out and live in the woods for a while, completely unaware of what living in the woods would really entail. First of all, the chances of you getting in your car and driving out of the city is going to be slim to none. You're assuming that the roads aren't going to be jammed. You're assuming that the police aren't going to be, cordoning off the roads. Nobody's being allowed to leave the city. You're assuming that the gas pumps will be working, and you're assuming you have somewhere to go when you get there. So this idea that, let's get the bug-out bag and hide in the woods, to me, that's viable only with a catastrophic disaster on a scale of, say, a meteor strike or
Yellowstone, something like that, right?
Or Yellowstone, exactly, something like that. Where, oh my God, well, 2 miles of lava is coming your way at 40 miles an hour. Yeah, better leave. But anything short of a major, near extinction level type of catastrophe, where are you going to run to? And even if you could get there, living in the woods is very hard. Nature is cruel. I love nature, but she's a cruel mistress, and she's completely unforgiving. You make a couple of little mistakes, and you're gone. Most people, even people that go camping, you're not going to last more than 3-4 months in the woods, max, and by far the large majority of people wouldn't even make it there anyway. So let's look at what's real and practical. What's real and practical is you have to stay where you are and make a go of it. Stand your ground, do the best you can. And most of us live in the city. We're going to have to stand our ground here and make the best of things here. So that means rooftop gardens and box gardens and backyard gardens and indoor hydroponic gardens and things like that. And, extra equipment. Look after your own medical needs. Have a really good first aid kit. And if you can, work together with a group of people and maybe purchase some extra equipment like a MRI machine, not an MRI, an ultrasound. You can do, treat injuries and diagnose injuries with that. Try to separate yourself from what you're dependent on now. Try to become more.
Well, that's very true. It's becoming more self-sufficient. Hey, we'll be right back after these messages, and you're listening to The Truth Traveler. And welcome back to The Truth Traveler. Our guest tonight is Stefan Verstappen. His website is chinastrategies.com. And now we're starting to discuss when something bad happens, that you may have to just hunker down where you are. And once we get through the top of the hour and the news break, we'll come back and we'll discuss, too, how to recognize the psychopaths, how to deal with them, what you may be up against if things get really, really bad. But for right now, we're talking about if you've got to hunker down, we're going to have to learn how to be a little bit more self-sustaining. Growing some food would be a good place to start.
And other things too. Learn how to do repairs. Learn how to fix your own car and your own toaster. Learn how to fix your own clothes. Those are the type of skills that'll come in handy again. Excuse me. So, and the next book that I'm coming out with is going to be called the Community Survival Plan, and it follows an age-old strategy that has been tried successfully in the past. Whenever people have come to this point in their society, the kind of corruption and crime and eventual decay, what has happened in the past is they try to form communities that can look after themselves. Prior to the welfare state that we have now and prior to health insurance and things like that, we had a system of lodges, or what were called mutual aid societies. And these were groups of people that formed societies, and often based on religion or demographics, which is fine. The Latvians would have their own group, and African Americans had their own group. As a matter of fact, these groups were most successful among the African Americans because they really pulled together and helped each other even better than any of the other groups did. But what it is a group of people that agree to cooperate, and they pool some of their money into a pot, and that money is used to provide services for the group. So before health insurance, it was these mutual aid societies that provided health insurance for workers. So if you got sick and you couldn't afford a doctor, well, you happened to belong to the Odd Fellows Lodge or the Moose Lodge, and they would pay for the doctor for you. As a matter of fact, they had doctors on their payroll that would administer medicine only to their members, and they were able to afford that easily with the small monthly donation that every member contributed.
Okay.
And so I think we need to go back to that. So, we're going to be stuck in the city, and we're going to have to survive it on our own. We probably won't be able to rely on the usual government services to provide for us. So we might not have ambulance service. We might not have police services. We might not even have communications. So a group of people that come together and agree that when times get tough, we will have each other's back. We'll help each other out. We'll divide some of the labor into tasks. So some people will be in charge of communications, and some people will be in charge of medicine and first aid. And if anything happens to individual members, they have the whole group to support them with food, with medicine, with moral support, and communications, and even with security. You have a couple of big guys come over to your house, and they'll stay for the night and watch guard for you if you're feeling nervous. Things like that, because we can't rely on the government for that, or we won't be able to if things continue the way we think things are going to go.
And are you getting the sense too that they're probably going to finally crash the dollar?
I thought it was going to happen 2 years ago.
I did too. So
I sold everything I had, and every trinket and worthless thing that you collect in your life. I got rid of it all, sold it, and bought gold and silver. And I continue to this day to do that, physical gold and physical silver. And I never used to do that type of, I never was interested in precious metals or investments, never could be bothered with that. But right now, it just seems to be, the smart play. I only put like 30% of my disposable income into it, and the rest for bills and paying off credit cards and things like that, and keep some in cash. I always try to keep, at least a month's supply for your necessities, rent, food, and whatever other bills. A month's worth of bills in cash, hidden somewhere. Don't ever tell anybody. In case of an emergency, you'll have that cash, and then the rest into gold and silver.
That's the way to go. Hey, we'll be right back. This is the long break at the top of the hour. There'll be some news and some commercials, and we'll be back for a long segment, and we'll discuss those ever-popular psychopaths. We'll be back to the Truth Traveler after this. Welcome back to the Truth Traveler. I'm Erin Dankins. Check out thetruthtraveler.com, please. You'll see a short video that I put up there for you all on the carrot bars. You'll also see a link to learn about carrot bars. And my phone number's up there, and, of course, my email. I want you all to check it out so that we can become a little bit more financially independent and have a side job as well. So I want you to check that out, please. And give me a call, email me with any questions, concerns, or if you just want more information, call me. I'm there because we do need to diversify. We do need to prepare. I do think this dollar is going to go kaput real soon. But let's get in with our guest, Stefan Verstappen, and his website is chinastrategies.com. Let's get in a little bit to discussing the psychopaths, because it seems like we, and I've said this on the show before, we live in a society that panders to the narcissists, the psychopaths, the sociopaths. Everything's about them. From every politician to most of the police officers anymore, to the celebrities, to the music stars, you name it. The neighbor next door anymore. They're out there everywhere. I call it the drug-induced narcissist psychopaths. We've got, I named my own little thing. You might like this, Stefan. I came up with one that's called the covert fragile narcissist. And that's somebody that, you like it? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they manipulate you. They're so kind. But pretty soon you realize that, well, crud, they just manipulated the heck out of me, okay? So they're out there. So how do we recognize these people, and how do we deal with them, especially in a collapse situation?
Well, good points. On a interpersonal level, previously we spoke about psychopaths and how they're affecting our society. And when you trace it back, you can see that it's largely their influence that is leading us to, the brink of whatever disaster is awaiting us. But on a personal level, the first thing that you should know about psychopaths is that they are difficult to spot. They are chameleons. They are expert actors and actresses. So it's very difficult to spot them. And even before I go into this discussion on the personal characteristics of psychopaths, let me just say that I am not a psychologist. I'm a researcher and a writer. And for the book, what I have done was I read, just about everything out there on the subject, and then I tried to distill it into like a Reader's Digest version of the most important salient facets that people can quickly pick up and use in their own personal lives. So I'm approaching this from a layman's point of view because I think most people are laymen. So I do not have any psychological credentials other than 2 years in college studying psychology. But more important is it's similar to a first aid course. You don't have to be a doctor to learn first aid. Similarly, you don't have to be a psychologist to learn just what you need to know to protect yourself against these types of personalities.
Right on.
So the first thing you need to know is it's difficult to spot them. Therefore, I'm always telling people, let's not, don't jump to conclusions that everybody can be a psychopath. All of us exhibit some of these qualities that, make us, are shared with psychopaths. The thing with psychopaths is they look and act pretty much just like everybody else. There's one difference, and that is that they have a complete lack of empathy. And perhaps empathy is not the word to use, but I can't think of a better one. They do not have a kind heart. They don't care about other people other than what those people can supply them. They care about you if you're giving them something that they need and they want. They care about you on that level, but intrinsically feeling your pain, they can never do that. So they can never feel your pain or your happiness or any of the emotions. So in a sense, they're dead inside. They've known this from an early age, and so they know how to fake the emotions that we expect other people to exhibit. And they're very good at figuring us out. So first rule is it's difficult to spot them. But the way you can spot them is through sort of like breaks in their moral character. They might not, they've rehearsed a reaction for most types of human scenarios. They know what they're supposed to say to sound as though they care. They know how to act as though, they're feeling what everyone else is feeling. But this is just a facade. It's just an act that they put on, and a very convincing act. So the first rule is, if you think you cannot be taken, it just makes you more susceptible to be taken, myself included. I've studied them. Consider myself something of an expert on them because of all the research and writing and just life experience. I'm 57
right.
now. I've been everywhere and seen a lot of people. For me I will not say definitively, yes, I trust them, yes, I don't trust them, they're psychopaths or not. No, because I can be fooled. So what you need to do is modify your behavior. You don't give them the PIN to your credit card. You don't give them the keys to your house. Even though you might like somebody and you might believe in them, you still have to keep your cards a little bit closer to your chest. You have to play a little bit cold, and it's not nice because we want to be caring and we want to trust people. I want to trust people. I know you do, Erin, too. We want to be in a world where, you can rely on the people around you, that you know what they're going to do and how they're feeling because they are just like you. You feel the same. But since we can't spot them 100% of the time, we just have to be careful. And I used to say everybody was a decent human being until they proved themselves otherwise. Now I'm following my wife's advice, which is your trust is earned slowly over time. And that's the best advice.
You have a smart wife.
Yeah, she's very good on this subject. She's the victim of horrific child abuse. Her father was a psychopath, and the family covered for him, And so
she learned the hard way. I've learned the hard way too, and I can still be duped. That's the stupid thing. I'm learning to keep my distance. I'm learning to say no. That's the biggest thing, because I will let people walk all over me, take, and then I sit there and I'm exhausted. And it's just like anymore, I can't do it all. I can't be everywhere and be everything to everybody. I'm learning to say no, learning to keep people at a distance. And it's not that I'm trying to be cruel. I just have been walked over, and so is my husband, our whole family, so many times. You just get to the point where you're just done.
Yeah. And that's sad because, that, in a sense, that gives into them as well. To have the reaction then that, humanity is too despicable to have anything to do with anymore. Because in addition to the primary psychopaths that are initiating, what can I call it, evil, initiating this influence in the world, there are also what we call a secondary psychopath, that are people that are taken in by the culture of the psychopath and mimic them and think that's the way to be. Look at popular TV shows and MTV videos and things like that. Everybody is a narcissist. Everybody cares about themselves. And so, if we were to say, humanity's just, they're all narcissists and they're selfish and you can't trust them, in a sense, we are letting them win too. So it's very difficult to find this balancing point, because if you don't, you'll get used and taken, one of the reasons I took martial arts, a benefit, was because I was like you and your husband, everybody can rely on me, if you need something done, I'll be over there, I'll, fix the car, pull it out of the ditch, whatever. And everybody used to say, oh, yeah, you're such a nice guy, but, nice guys finish last. And
last.
I got kind of tired of that. Geez, why do nice guys finish last? Excuse me. Why do nice guys finish last? So everybody thought I was a pushover. So studying martial arts, and now 35 years later, I'm the great kung fu master, and everybody walks on eggshells around me lest I jump into action and murder them.
You just might do that, right?
No, I would never.
No,
do
people
that.
don't. See, the people that think that, they don't understand kung fu. They don't understand martial arts at all. That's a whole other show, but they don't.
I don't ever have to hit anybody because I can talk to people. I can use verbal negotiation and things like that. I don't have a bad attitude. I can talk my way out of any violent situation, and I have on numerous occasions. So, I've never hit anyone in my life other than full contact sparring, which I used to do a great deal of, but now I'm getting a little bit too old. I don't want to get that
anymore. When you get older, yeah, it just hurts. It's like, why do I want to inflict pain upon myself? I don't.
Yeah,
okay?
and I've broken fingers and toes and things like that. I'm done now.
I'm done.
Yeah. So what do we do then? Yeah, we have to be sharp, but on the other hand, I don't want to say, look, don't trust anybody anymore. That's a harsh thing to do. So I kind of balance it. I make my own friends, and I have very few friends compared to when I was younger. I was Mr. Popular, back in the college days, and dozens and dozens of friends. Now I have maybe 3, maybe 4 friends, and those are the ones I trust. And for me now, that's enough, And so I keep an open mind. If I see somebody that I believe is virtuous and I've observed that person over a period of time, and they've never done anything in that period of time to cause any doubt as to their, personal integrity, then I will be more and more giving again,
Well, now what about when something really bad happens? That's the thing is when you have an innate nature to have a good heart and that you want to help people. Yeah. And I have pondered, I'm a prepper. I have pondered this for years, and I've thought long and hard. How am I going to deal if something really bad happens with everybody? Because there's got to be a line. There's got to be a line that you draw within yourself, that you're not going to cross or let anybody cross that line, because it endangers your family and your survival. So how do we recognize the psychopath during a collapse? Because I feel like a lot of these people is spoiled, and is the me society, we're going to be surrounded by these psychopaths. And I'm not really sure how to deal with them. I think it's not going to be very pretty, but we'll be right back, and we'll talk about that some more after these messages. You're listening to The Truth Traveler. And his website is chinastrategies.com. He's also the author of The Art of Urban Survival, a family and safety and self-defense manual. So check that out. And we're discussing the psychopaths. And this is a real short segment, Stefan, so we won't get real in depth here. We have a long one coming up. But when something really major happens, it either really brings out the good in people or it really brings out the bad. And I'm afraid when this dollar collapses, that the bad are really going to be out to play, and they're not going to be playing nice. And how do we deal with that and still remain human? We can't just shoot everybody.
No. I don't advocate shooting people anyways. I would never do that. People say, especially in the prepper movement, everybody's, has a fetish with firearms. And I shoot, I've shot all my life, rifles and shotguns and pistols, and, I have a respect for them. But is that the solution to what's going to come around? I really don't think so. I'm glad you're a prepper, Erin, because it indicates that you're an intelligent person, because it's an insurance policy. It's the best insurance policy you can do, is to put a few things aside. So let's say worst case scenario, we have a complete societal breakdown. If you're a smart prepper, you have not told anyone about your preps. It's got to be a big secret. Even my family doesn't know what I have.
Well, my family knows, but most people around here don't know what we have. But, of course, I talk about it on the air. So, that's where I started. I started in prepping. That's how I got to this point. I do believe in prepping. It's my insurance. It's what makes us tick here at this house. We've been hungry before. We've had to go to the food pantries. Mm-hmm. And we were bound and determined that was never going to happen again.
Yeah. No, I once fasted for 3 days voluntarily as a spiritual discipline, and another time I was without food for 5 days. I was up in a small cabin up in the woods and non-voluntarily, which is a completely different thing when you're hungry and you can't eat, and it changes you. You will do things you don't think you would do once you start getting hungry, and so that is a worry. If there's lots of people and they're hungry, they will do things that, they wouldn't normally do under normal conditions. So how do you protect yourself? I get back to this community. You have to have people that will watch you and that you can watch them. And you have to do it now. You have to try and form your communities now so that you have time to weed out the psychopaths. Because you have one psychopath in your community, everything is lost. And so try and form a group of people, of like-minded individuals, meet once a month or once a week, and discuss ideas of how you can prepare and complement each other's preps. One person might specialize in medical preps, and another person will specialize in food and organic preps, and how you can support each other. And I think if we do it now and we have some time to assess each other, then hopefully when, if things get that bad, we have a group of people that we can rely on, because a group is always more effective than an individual. Although in the book I do have, escape and evade, a chapter on escape and evade tactics. And if you have to go rogue and sort of go underground and hide out, the city's a good place to hide too.
Well, this is true. But people have to exercise some common sense, too. That's what I've told people over the years as I've helped them start to kind of get into the prepping. You can't be the only one in your neighborhood that has tons of kerosene lanterns, okay?
Yeah.
And the grill, the barbecue you're grilling or you're always cooking something. You got to use common sense. Put blackout blankets on your windows. Do something. Try to be a little bit more covert about it. Don't advertise to the whole town that, wow, you've got supplies, and wow, you can cook your food, and wow, you can heat your house, and you've got water. It's probably not real smart.
No, that's what we call playing the gray man. You have to blend into the surroundings. You can't stick out. You can't be noticeable. So, and actually you have to do that now. You have to, hide the light of your intelligence now. You can't be seen to be too smart, because people will look at you kind of strange, because that person reads books and he's got opinions, and we don't know if we like that, because it's part of the whole psychopathic mentality. Everybody has to think the same and feel, so that we can control you better.
That's very, very true. We'll be right back. We've got a long segment coming up, and you're listening to The Truth Traveler with Stefan Verstappen. Our guest is Stefan Verstappen. His website is ChinaStrategies.com. And we're discussing, during a collapse, that there are probably going to be some kind of not so very nice people. And, when it's a situation like that, you're just going to have to be very, very cautious on who you trust. And my big thing is look at their eyes. Watch their eyes when you're talking to them. If you're, a lot of times if they're lying, the psychopaths, they're pretty good about making eye contact, but you're still going to see what I call little tells. So you've got to learn to kind of gauge that. Have you studied that at all, Stefan?
Oh yeah. You're absolutely right, Erin. And that's something that you only develop through experience, But you're right, those little tells, there's hints to it. You can see them, and, eventually they'll add up to whether or not you believe they're, full-blown psychopath. But, also, I sort of want to be a little bit positive, too, because lot of my research for the book was, what did they do in the past? How did the people survive World War II? We're probably going to go through a tough period of time, but whatever that period is, it will pass. All things will come and then they will go. So, I'm telling people to prepare for it, but also to prepare for the future that will come afterwards. And although, there's going to be bad things that happen, and there's criminal elements in every society that will try and take advantage of this. But, if you apply just a little bit of street smarts and a little bit of caution, you could probably avoid most of that, and it won't even affect you. I'm reminded of a story by the founder of modern karate, a Japanese man by the name of Gichin Funakoshi, and it's my favorite story about him. It was he was in Tokyo right after the Second World War, and we all know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but Tokyo itself was also, hit with incendiaries, and there was a firestorm that lasted 5 days, and it completely wiped out the city. And it was several months after the war, and he was coming back from a karate tournament, and all he had on him was a half a dozen rice balls, and he was approached by, bandits waiting in lurk for him, and they were intent on robbing him. Now, everybody that takes martial arts thinks, well, he's going to turn around and do a spinning kick to this guy, and he's going to kill the other guy with a karate chop to the windpipe, and this and that. This is, what we're trained, this is our reaction. Now you're going to be robbed by these, But what Gichin did was he realized that these people were starving Japanese. They were his fellow countrymen. It wasn't their fault that they were starving and homeless. That was the result of the war and the firebombing of Tokyo. So what he did was he pulled out his rice balls and he shared it with them. So there was no killing, no fighting, no beating people up. He just shared what he had. And so in the plan that I have for my next book, the Community Survival Plan, if we do form these communities, and what I've done is created a set of bylaws that you can follow and adopt into a legal nonprofit organization if you need to. But one of the bylaws that I came up with is the same as a religious tithe. That community will donate 10% to the rest of the community outside of their own personal group, but to the general population, they will donate 10% of their supplies during a time of an emergency. And I think that's what we should do as individuals. Now, you might not want to donate it personally. You might want to say, leave a box of canned food outside of a food bank late at night when nobody sees where it came from, or you might want to, set up a table at the park and offer soup to people. As long as they don't know where it came from, then you should be okay. But I do think that we should all give back 10%. I mean, that's not asking a lot. Let's give it back to our society, our fellow man. So they weren't as smart as us to get ready. Okay, they're going to pay the price for it.
They're going to pay the ultimate price. That's right.
Yeah, they're going to suffer, and their lives are not going to be happy. So can I stand there and do absolutely nothing? No. Can I save everybody? No.
No.
But can I give them 10% and say, look, this is what I can give. This is what I've saved up extra to give to strangers that don't have anything to do with me, but this is my moral duty to my fellow human beings. I will give something, not everything, not half, but I will give a small percentage of my riches to people that have not, and I don't care where it goes to or how it's used, and that's it. And to me, that's probably a good moral code to adopt. So, do you want to shoot the starving people that are at your door? Did Gichin Funakoshi want to kill these guys that robbed him of his rice cakes? No, I would chase them away from the front door and say, next week or tomorrow down at the park, you might be able to find a couple of cans of food there. Fine, but I'm not in favor of using violence for these people because they are, after all, our fellow Americans and our fellow Canadians. And most of them, if it wasn't for this psychopathic programming that we've been born and raised into, would probably be decent people too, So I
think they would be. I just think they're going to get so mean. That's what scares me.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm I'm not sure that they are going to get that mean. I don't know. Like, we're set up for that, but I'm not sure if that isn't part of the conditioning too, because when you talk to people that lived through World War II, my background, my family is from Holland, and when you read the stories, I mean, half my family were hiding Jews in their attic. People that they had no relationship to, and they went out of their way and risked their lives, because if you were, caught hiding Jews, and also what they used to call Jodengeld, which was, a lot of times the Jews would leave the country and say, here, look after our family heirlooms while we're gone, and after the war we'll try and come back and pick them up. They would be shot if they were caught doing that, and yet they did it. And this was, during a time when everybody was hungry, when bombs were falling off the sky, where people being, taken out of their homes, marched down to the end of the street and shot in the back of the head. And still, these people, most of the people worked together. They weren't vicious and cruel to each other. There was a lot of cruelty, yeah, but not all of them, most of them weren't. So even under those dire conditions, they still had some human dignity. I think we can do the same. I don't think it's going to be that bad. They're not shooting us yet. There's no bombs falling out of the sky yet. We might be a little bit hungry. We got to do without our entertainments and our vices, but that's no reason to start, shooting people.
No, I don't want to just start shooting people.
I'm not saying
no, I mean, I believe in weapons too, and I love to target shoot, but, and I'm married to a soldier too, so it makes me a little different mindset, but maybe the Canadians are nicer. I don't know. I look at, we have, I don't know about up there, but the drug addiction, the substance abuse is rampant. It's absolutely insane. And these people, because of their addictions, their substance abuse, they become narcissists. Everything's about them and getting their fix. I've lived through it, okay?
Oh, yeah, junkie is a psychopath.
They are, and they're just, they are, and they're not going to be nice. I just know that. The people down here anymore in America, I'm in Indiana, but it's like a lot of the people in Indiana have more of an East Coast mindset. Not that the East Coast people are bad, especially ones listening to the show, but sometimes they're very close, they're very tight, they're very uptight. They're just not going to be real nice. And we've got roving gangs that are just absolutely crazy. Even in our little area, we have gangs, and we're right on a. It's one of those roads they'll use to bypass go across country to deliver their drugs, like a mule route.
Oh, yeah.
We're not too far from that, and it makes me a little uncomfortable as well. So I just don't know. Maybe you Canadians are a lot nicer than the Americans, because anymore the Americans are so spoiled, and they're so decadent, and the substance abuse and the pornography is just off the charts. I mean, these people have gone off the reservation. To support my country of origin, Canada is a little bit nicer. I'm fond of saying that Canada is what America used to be in the 50s and 60s, I'm moving up there then.
Except the other thing I used to say is I moved from Hitler's Germany to Stalin's Russia.
Well, this is true. I know. I've got a real good friend that lives in Manitoba. So, I mean, we were at least at 40 degrees so until I talked to him in March, and he still had 4 feet of snow. I said, Carl, you can keep the snow up there, okay? Oh,
it was a brutal winter. So, Canadians are a little bit nicer. I got to be honest with you, because I lived in the States for 13 years, and I've traveled all through the United States many times, and there is a criminal element there that I've never seen in Canada, that I've never seen in Europe, that I've never seen in Asia.
Really?
I've been down the worst, back alleys of Bangkok at 4 o'clock in the morning in Hong Kong. None of it was scary. It was nothing,
really?
No, there was nothing to be afraid of. I mean, I'm a pretty big guy and a martial arts expert, so there's not much I'm afraid of anyways. But even still, I was never worried. However, I do a lot of mountain biking, and I like to explore a city by mountain and mountain bike. And I've been caught in places like Compton after dark on a mountain bike, and Oakland and things like that. And there is a criminal element there that I've never seen anywhere in the world. It's really scary.
And they're brutal. They're brutal.
They're brutal.
Absolutely brutal. And my biggest fear is somebody's going to try to get in here. And the last thing that I'll die for any one of my children, any one of them. I'll die for my husband and a lot of my really good friends. I would lay my life down for them. I cannot handle if some of those tried to break in and rape my daughters. I would probably go ballistic. I'm just telling you,
Sure.
Stefan, I know I would go nuts.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the mindset of these people anymore down here. It really is. It's going to some of the bad parts of town, even your average-sized town that we live about 25 minutes from. You go into some parts of that town at night, and you're putting your life in your hands, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the gang problem is horrendous. I mean, everywhere I lived in California, like Santa Paula, is a one light town. You know, there's a gas station and a variety store, and that's the entire town. And I was reading the local newspaper, and they have 16 recognized gangs. I mean, where did they come from? How could you have 16 street gangs in a one gas station town? So, but the thing with the street gangs and all that, and there is a nasty element there, a very bad element. And yeah, you know, when I'm saying I'm not in favor of shooting people, I'm not in favor of shooting hungry people. However,
no, and I feel bad for them. And you want to try to help them. We have what we call our charity stash. Okay,
exactly.
That we've put back. That's what we've done. But that only lasts so long. Okay, we'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to The Truth Traveler. Stefan Verstappen. His website is chinastrategies.com. So check that out. He's all over YouTube, too, listeners. You can find him there discussing psychopaths. It's up there. He is the author of The Art of Urban Survival, so check that out. Stefan, it's gone really, really fast tonight. This is our last segment. We have just a few minutes left. I do want to thank you for being on The Truth Traveler with us, and I hope you come back someday.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Erin. And it's been really great talking to you. I'm glad to be talking to a fellow prepper.
Oh, well, I'm always glad when I meet a fellow prepper because it's definitely a community, and that's what I like about it, because we're all kind of not always on the exact same page, but we're at least in the same book.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like that.
And, you know, I want to end on a positive point because things are going to get better. We're going to go through some turbulence, and if you're a little bit prepared and you've taken some precautions, I think we'll come through this okay, and things will be much better. In the meantime, I'd like to offer things that we can do now to try and fight not only the psychopaths in our lives, but the psychopaths that control our society. And the first thing that people need to do is to critically think for themselves about just about everything. Don't take an expert's opinion on something. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, you're talking about psychopaths, but you don't have the credentials of a psychologist. But, you know, I'm thinking for myself. I've met enough psychologists, and a great proportion of them are lunatics. So, you know, just because you have a PhD behind your name is not the seal of approval. So don't take that as a given. You know, think for yourself. Use your own mind and analyze everything, and be careful that way. Also, be more self-reliant. Do as much as you can for yourself, and don't rely on the services that other people provide that may not be there when things get tough. So self-reliance is really important. Of course, we've already talked about emergency preparations. Very important. Another thing is individualism. I really think the antidote to the psychopath is individualism, because what we see with the government and the corporations and the banks, they want us all to be in line. They like their herd mentality, because the herd can be rounded up and sent to the slaughterhouse, you know. So don't belong necessarily to big impersonal groups that divide you against other Americans. You know, I get Republicans emailing me saying, oh, I'm against Republicans in my video. And then I get Democrats writing me, oh, you're so against Democrats in your video. And yet I know exactly, I've shown exactly the same number of Republicans as Democrats, equally divided, you know. So, But what we're doing is this Democrat, Republican, and religion and race and sex is we're divided, you know. We're divided into all these different groups. Don't belong to a group. You're an individual. Make your decisions based on how you feel about people on an individual level. So if I like a black guy, then that's because I like him. That doesn't have anything to do with the race. You know, I trust people based on their own character.
Their merit, who they are, what they stand for. Yes.
Meritocracy. So individualism, self-reliance, critical thinking, and then most important is try to be happy, you know, because this life is so short. And once you've got your preps down, you got your insurance policy, you got some training, you're ready to go, you got a little bit of gold and silver set aside, you have some firearms, okay, you're good. You've done what is, you know, expected for an intelligent person to do to prepare to survive on their own for a few months or maybe even a year or two. But in the meantime, once that's done, enjoy life. Be creative. Go out into nature. Laugh. Play music. It's really important to enjoy life. I don't want it to be too negative about, things are going to be rough, but we'll get through it, you know. And most importantly, we have to get through it with our souls intact, meaning we have to continue feeling joy at being alive on this planet, because that is the miracle that we are conscious creatures on this planet. And you should be grateful and overwhelmed with the joy of this opportunity.
I'm right with you on that, Stefan, and we have to stay human. We got to stay human. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we're out of time, listeners. We'll see you back here tomorrow night with Sam Jenkins, a super soldier. Have a great evening.